I am James Swanwick. Welcome to the show. I love when I get to celebrate clients who have reached 1 year alcohol free. And today we are talking to one of those clients, a lovely woman by the name of Karen Grundhofer, who is a 56-year-old technology consultant and a philanthropist based out of Newport Beach, California. Karen just joined us recently at our annual Alcohol Free Lifestyle Live retreat in Sedona, Arizona, and I got to spend 4 or 5 amazing days with her. And Karen is about to share her story about how she couldn't quit alcohol through AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, and how she has been able to quit alcohol through AFL, as in Alcohol Free Lifestyle, and our Project 90 process. Karen, I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. Welcome.
I'm excited too, James, and grateful.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a pretty long journey from what you've shared with me. Just tell us a little bit about you initially, where you live, where you're from, what you do, and then we'll talk about your journey.
Well, it's important to say I lived as an expat for 20 years, originally from Newport Beach and born here, but moved around the country, always staying tied to the US, but living abroad, mostly in the Middle East, for about 20 years. So I raised my family there, uh, lived there as really a local more than anything, and but moved back in 2016. And I had some really unresolved trauma in my life from college, and also from experiences in the Middle East, and that led me to having what I would call a uncomfortable relationship with alcohol, and using it as something to soothe my anxiety and difficulty and pain, uh, and everything. So, and then really what happened was I had done a show because I'd been part of it. I was a gunshot victim in college in the 90s. And I had never, back then, we really didn't have mental health. So we just went on and lived uh, our normal lives and never really dealt with what I had gone through. And so I really, for the most of my life, identified as a survivor. But I think what really happened was I hadn't really dealt with the trauma at all. And so I was really inside a victim and kind of lived in that fight or flight mode throughout my life, which seemed exciting, but also isn't a place to live. It's a place to survive, but then to go back to live in that space for, you know, 20 plus years is a difficult place to be. And so I had done an interview. They did a Dateline type show on a channel called ID Discovery. And when I watched it, I had a full on PTSD incident, and which landed me in the hospital because I kind of rewatched it, drank, rewatched it, and went to a really dark place. And I ended up, my daughter came home and found me. Terrible thing for a 16-year-old, or she was 18 at the time, to find her mom passed out. And I went to the hospital, and they said, would you like to, go into our program, our rehab program? And I said, yes, because I knew alcohol was hurting me, but I didn't know, but I had it in control, so to speak. But so it was, and then I could blame the PTSD incident, which I started to do work. But also, when I heard the words of AA, I related to this idea of trying to stop. They have a whole paragraph: taking a trip, not taking a trip, like all these ways you tried to stop. And I had tried to stop in those different ways. So I related to that. Um, what I didn't identify with, and still don't today, is identifying myself as an alcoholic, that my life was, that I was powerless over alcohol, and my life was unmanageable because I was managing my life. I was living a life. Nobody, people close to me thought, oh, she drinks a lot. She has a good excuse, kind of thing. But it wasn't that I was, I wasn't having DUIs. I actually pretty much had it together. And so that made it even harder in some ways.
Yeah. Karen, would you feel comfortable or uncomfortable going back to the college incident in the 90s when you were the gunshot victim? Like, how do you manage conversations around that now? Is my first question. And then depending on your answer, maybe we could just go back there briefly just to
Right.
put it further in context.
So I was at kind of what you might think is one of the first college shootings. I went to the University of California, Berkeley, and there was an incident one evening at the Hotel Durant, which, if you know Berkeley, you know the Hotel Durant and Henry's. And a bunch of my friends were there, and a gunman had come in and just kind of started shooting at the end of the night when they did last call. And I happened to be, he had an automatic rifle, and I was very close to the door that goes into the bar of the hotel. And he was saying, get down, get down. We were confused. I mean, now today you would know what it is, but back then we didn't have a clue. But we're like, everyone's getting down and screaming and everything. And so was leaning in a certain way. So what happened was the automatic went up, straight up that way. And so it hit me. I have 7 gunshot wounds across the right side of my body. One that went up in through the upper buttocks, I guess you could say, and out through the front. But then I had one that went through the bottom of my breast and out through the top, and then 3 in the middle of my stomach. And so I actually have a phantom wound. So that was its own kind of miracle in itself, because a bullet has to go in or out. And I never had a bullet in my body, and I had 7 holes. So there was always, even the doctor in the hospital, he was a Vietnam vet doctor, and he's like, I've never seen anything like this. So I that was part of the problem. Like I was a survivor, and we call people who've been through something difficult survivors, but I never dealt with any of the pain and all the feelings and all of that went along with it. And so that's where I think from that point on, I was just constantly vigilant, constantly stressed about it. And also, I kind of became the poster child for the incident, even though many of my friends and other college students had been in a hostage situation. None of their names were released, but everybody, I was over 21, and everyone knew my name. And everywhere I went, I was identified as the survivor from the Henry shooting, and everyone knew. And I think that made me make very different decisions than I had planned on making for the rest of my life, actually. So it did shape a lot of choices that I made going forward.
As we're recording this now, how does it feel to share the story? Because you candidly shared that back then, you rewatched this television program and you drank excessively, and then your daughter came and found you. And you obviously had a PTSD moment at that time, or rather, you were told that you had. Now, as you're sharing it with me and our listener, how does it feel today?
Oh, I mean, it's freedom. It's behind me. I did EMDR therapy shortly after that incident in 2016, and I had really identified why a lot of things about myself, and everything in my life was better after that. But I couldn't really properly shake alcohol, even though I had a little over 2 years sober doing AA. I I always longed for it. I was always white knuckling, more or less, because I never really had my answer of the why. But today, yes, I am free. It's really, this year has given me freedom in a way that I never knew it could exist for me.
So even when you were 2 years alcohol free in AA, you didn't feel free.
No, you know, this thing is an inside job. Like, we have to love ourselves and love the person we are inside. And on the outside, I come off as, happy go lucky, easygoing, and I am all those things, but inside I'm really critical of myself. I have that expectation of perfectionism, uh, that I don't want to fail. Identifying as an alcoholic made me feel like a failure. Like, why can't I get this thing? I have been successful in so many things in my life, despite a lot of hardships that I had faced, yet I can't get a handle on this thing. And the idea that I was an alcoholic uh, just didn't sit for me. Yes, I had some serious problems, and those were from the inside. And I soothed those yucky feelings that I was having with drinking. And yet, I mean, through you, I have learned how, about this concept of, you know, uh, the alcohol industry itself. And I really think that the alcohol industry loves this title alcoholic, because it gets you to this place of saying, all those people have a problem with my perfectly packaged poison, quote your words.
Mhm.
But the rest of you, you're fine. You can drink it. It's okay. They don't tell you, oh, and by the way, it's a class 1 carcinogen. It is proven to cause all kinds of diseases, definitely linked to different cancers, all of those things that are now just starting to come out, which is really exciting, actually. But and going back to the socialization that I experienced growing up, I never did a hard drug. Hard drugs were addictive. They were bad for you. They would ruin your life, and you would not be able to have a good life if you did drugs. But my socialization of alcohol is, I need alcohol for everything. I need alcohol to have fun. I need to have alcohol if I'm having a hard day. I need to have alcohol to meet friends, to have fun. There isn't an experience that I had growing up that didn't have an aspect of alcohol included in it. And that came from my family. It came from society. It came uh, from the entire world, basically. And, you know, if you told me when I was 12 years old, 13 years old, and hadn't had anything to drink yet, this could kill you, this is bad for you, and explain how the harm works, the why alcohol will be addictive, how the dopamine works. If you had taught me all of that at 12, 13 years old, I probably wouldn't have drank.
Mm. I was interested when you said you felt like you had to identify as an alcoholic. And I think you're referencing being an AA at that point. And what was also interesting is that for many years you identified as a survivor. So you identified as a survivor from the shooting, and then you were identifying as an alcoholic, or at least being invited to identify as an alcoholic where you were an AA. And so this identifying these labels, either you were self-labeling yourself or others were labeling you as something that maybe inherently didn't feel right to you. Is that right?
Right, I would say so. I mean, when it comes to Survivor, I think that aspect of right now, I'm starting to work with human trafficking survivors, and they're definitely survivors at getting out of the situation if they're being trafficked. But there's so much work to be done. First, just meeting their basic needs, and then moving forward after that. So I try and say, definitely fake it till you make it. Call someone a survivor, but it is an inside job, so you really need to there's actually like a whole long laundry list of victim mentality, and I probably could have checked off every one of those boxes of gaining sympathy, feeling sorry for myself, having excuses for behavior or reactions, that kind of thing. So I'm a very open person. And so saying something that I am, but not really feeling it inside, um, is hurtful to me. It's detrimental. And so I'm very conscious of what I label people and try not to label people, but ultimately that's kind of the way our brain works. But I'm conscious of what I'm putting out there and being true and real and honest. And so when I say I'm a survivor today, and I can say it to you happily with a smile on my face and really feel it, that to me is true authenticity. And for me, that is who I am and who I want to be. I want to be a survivor and feel it and share it, because the minute you feel it and it's authentic, then you get to share it with the world. And so that's where I'm at now. But to go back to be labeling myself as an alcoholic, I just, well, why am I, who says I'm an alcoholic? Well, it's a self-diagnosis. In fact, it's the only considered disease that we self-diagnose. A doctor doesn't tell you, your symptoms. Well, the variety of symptoms someone has, someone could binge drink once a month and they go into an AA meeting and identify as an alcoholic. Someone could be literally living on the streets and identify as an alcoholic. The gambit is huge there, and it's a false, to me it's a false diagnosis. We as human beings encounter pain when we're young and throughout life, and we have to find mechanisms to soothe that pain inside. And I've learned more this year about soothing that pain than I have in my whole life before that. And when we self-soothe, so that's the problem also in the model of AA, is that, and again, let me be clear, I am not bashing AA. It works for a lot of people. It just didn't work for me. So let's be clear about that. But why AA doesn't work for some people is that you don't get to the core of what's causing your pain that you're trying to soothe. And so you find also either people will continually go back to drink, or they find another coping mechanism because they're really not coping with what they need to, which is the stuff in here and inside.
Do you recall the first time saying in front of either an AA meeting or others, I'm an alcoholic? And what was that experience like?
Well, okay, so yes, I can. And it wasn't a big defining moment, but when when you're not feeling good and you go to the doctor and they're like, "Oh, there's nothing wrong with you, you're fine." It's actually frustrating because you want a diagnosis. And so in some ways it was a relief. Oh, I'm an alcoholic. Okay. And I went to the hospital that I was actually born in, which is where I actually did this an outpatient program. But the first AA meeting was in detox, and I didn't really need to detox because I hadn't been drinking a week. I had one bad night, so I had to sit in detox for a few days before they would let me do the program. And they used to do these AA meetings for the people in detox. And so I went to it, and I actually ran into two people I knew from high school, and it was like a little reunion. But also, I said, okay, well, that's the answer. I'm an alcoholic. And for a time, that gave me peace. At least I had an answer to why I couldn't quit and take this poison out of my life. And that was just a simple answer, and it gave me relief in the moment. And it didn't really bother me until later that the more I learned, and now it just pisses me off. It makes me really, really mad to think that I had to identify that way. And in theory, if I go into a meeting to even support someone that I care about, the social energy would be surprised if I didn't identify as an alcoholic in that room. Because as a group, in my area where I live, AA has an amazing network, and they're beautiful people. And I love so many of those I have encountered in that group. And their meaning it's very well meaning, but it doesn't work for a lot of people. And the problem is that they say, okay, get a sponsor, follow direction, and you will be successful. And if you're not successful in this program, you will then you will in turn fail. And that's your fault because you're not following the program right. You're not following direction. And that's the essence of it. And for me, like, first of all, my sponsor, I'm not going to even talk about my sponsor other than to say she was very well meaning. And the idea of a sponsor is to be accountable, number one, and for them to share their experience. But they're not a trained counselor, coach, therapist, or anything. So you're being accountable to someone, yes. And we have an element um, of accountability in alcohol-free lifestyle, but when it comes down to, like, when we're having a really hard time, we have our coaches who are always available to us to really talk about the nitty-gritty of getting through something that's really difficult. And a sponsor doesn't have those resources, and they don't have that ability unless they happen to be a therapist themselves. But more than likely, people have pretty uncomfortable relationships with their sponsors. And the bigger joke was, oh, if you like your sponsor, they're doing their job wrong. You should not like your sponsor. That's kind of a joke in AA. So
Yeah.
I felt, for me, that was, that accountability was good. But I also think, we use accountability in a lot of areas of our lives. And, and even, like, I mean, I've read stuff on your social media where people are like, oh, well, AA is free and your program costs money. And I'll tell you, you got to have skin in the game to be accountable for a lot of people, number one. And number two, the model I know is most people get to AA through a very expensive rehab situation where insurance covers some people don't think, oh, rehab is my answer. And rehab is not your answer. Rehab is sequestering you for a period of time to keep you away from whatever you're trying to get away from. And then you have to go back into the world with very few tools to actually deal with that pain you're trying to soothe.
Well said. I've read, and I don't want us to stay on like the AA thing for the duration
Right.
of it, but I think just to wrap up this part of it, the conversation around AA is that I've researched AA thoroughly. I've been to some AA meetings, and from what I have read, AA has a reported 7% success rate. Now, that means that 93% who attempt it don't get success. Now, what is success? You have to define what success is. Success in this regard is people who are able to, for at least a year, be what they consider to be sober, right? Like, at least you've got more than a year success. And, you can pick holes through the studies. You can always show a study that supports whatever argument you want, and et cetera, et cetera. But, I've read dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of studies, many self-reported, others just reporting on what they observe. That 7% seems to be about the agreed upon success rate of AA. And yet, for decades, AA seems to be the default modality for people like yourself, like anyone else who's tried it, to somehow get sober. And, you sharing anecdotally what your experience was like seems to back up what I have read, which is that 7% success rate. Now, look, you could argue that actually you're part of the 7% that it did work for, because you actually did go 2 years without alcohol, right? So I guess you could say you were part of the 7%. But then something happened after 2 years, right, Karen? You went back to drinking. And also, you don't look back upon AA as being a successful experience for you, I guess. Can you talk to that? And then we can just wrap up the AA part and move
Yeah,
on.
I mean, no one wanted it to work more than I did, because I wanted alcohol out of my life, and I wanted to do it in the way where I sit with it now. But again, because first of all, I I consider myself a successful person, and time is valuable. And the idea that, you try and go to meetings because you not just for not the accountability, just to put you in the right headspace to stay alcohol free or to stay sober. But I often like meetings wanting to drink, to be honest. I mean, a lot of people, there's no, I found that the meetings I liked the most were book studies, where at least I was studying the material, which then put me in a place. I want to learn and I want to grow. And I was leaving AA meetings feeling stunted. And so that for me also was like, this is a waste of my time. And I still am sitting there wanting that glass of wine with everybody else and everything. And so that, um, I mean, yeah, I kind of lost my train of thought there, but because you asked about something else specifically, which was,
Well, maybe just looking back on those 2 years as being successful or unsuccessful, on that you were alcohol free for 2 years, but then you returned to drinking.
yeah, well, yeah, I still, there was something in my mind that, first of all, thought, I'm strong enough, I can live in moderation. And that, because, you know, because I'm clever enough, I can trick it. I didn't, understand the science of it to enough to realize I couldn't trick it because it was in my brain already, right? And so that was one aspect of it that led me back to drinking and thinking I could control it. Uh, and and I didn't touch on like the higher power part, but there is this aspect of giving it up to your higher power. And I believe in God. I'm not religious. I'm spiritual, I would say. But uh I feel that God gave me a really intelligent brain. And in that and in that brain, I have the power to say yes, and I have the power to say no. And I do it a million times every day. Okay, I don't want to eat the cake. I'm not going to eat the cake. We make these choices daily. And why? So why can't I just make the choice to say, I don't want alcohol in my life anymore? And I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it because I didn't understand the science, and I couldn't understand how the dopamine and all the hormones worked in my body, um, to rid of it. And socially, I never needed alcohol to socially fit in with others. On the contrary, I did more drinking in isolation than I did in public. But uh, this the idea that I had been socialized since youth needed to be changed and transformed, because I still believed, well, these things aren't fun if I'm not having a drink with it. I can't have fun without alcohol. I can't relax without alcohol. That type of thing. And all of those lingering thoughts needed to be really reformatted. They were bad patterns. And as I've learned in your program, we have to change our patterns in order to make change in our lives. And that's like further on about talking about your program, but specifically, like, there were no patterns being changed. There was nothing being addressed in, other than, get on your knees every day, live in gratitude, and then the shame that you feel personally, and the failure part when you have to go back in as a newcomer, is mortifying.
Mortifying. That's a strong word.
Yes. Well, it was for me, and I know it is for others. It's embarrassing. It feels like failure, and it feels like you're walking into a classroom and the teacher just, like, spanked you in the old days or whatever. Like, it feels like public humiliation
Mm.
to me. And everyone's really nice and whatever, but it's what you feel inside. So it's demoralizing. And how can that be good for loving yourself? It's
Mm.
and just to go back to what you were saying, why is AA the go-to? it's the easy go-to. It becomes just like, okay, send them to AA. This is the answer. There's judges now in Orange County where I live that part of your, if you get a DUI, is you have to go to a certain number of AA meetings. And most of those people definitely don't stay alcohol free. I'll tell you that. But uh, you know, there's the other side of the money part where people say, oh, your program costs money or whatever. Well, I mean, going to rehab is really expensive, but insurance covers some of it. I mean, insurance is always the animal that can drive us. Money drives people's choices. And if insurance will pay for rehab, but they're certainly not paying for AFL, then you're going to choose the rehab model and then try and do AA for free. And so I think there's that interesting aspect. And the other thing I want to say is, look, people, they used to put people in mental institutions when they were addicted to alcohol. And that just doesn't wash today, right? But in those times in the 30s when they created AA, it was an answer, a different answer. And like I talked about earlier, when you're sick, you want an answer. Well, here's an answer. Here's a way. But they also used to do lobotomies to people. I mean, science, and we grow and learn every day with what we're learning about the body, about science. We can go back and say, okay, that was really great then, but it really doesn't wash today. This humiliation, this way of doing things can change, and we can evolve with it. And there's some really great things in AA. Understanding, like even the Serenity Prayer about accepting what you can't change, and really just take your part. Going out and clearing out your past and saying, yeah, I made these mistakes, and being accountable. Those things are important. The 12th step is about giving back. I mean, my whole life is about giving back. So elements of AA are great. It just needs to evolve. And yet the people who are like the diehard people who follow it to the T, who really feel that we can't even change the archaic wording in it. It's very offensive if you're a woman or if you're definitely if you have a different sexual orientation, or it's a Christian, it's a male Christian based program that hasn't changed one bit since it started. And I just think that we've evolved in so many ways with the research and learning that we could improve it. And I think there are definitely elements in AFL that take it to a different level, that really are working with the science, that really makes it appealing to someone who wants to understand why they can't quit alcohol.
My final comment on AA, and then we'll move on. In the big book, AA's big book, it's this famous book, right, which outlines the steps and everything. On page 84, AA says, quote, "We have ceased fighting anything or anyone, and love and tolerance of others is our code." End quote. I can't tell you how many messages I get from AA people calling me a scumbag, a snake oil salesman. I should be ashamed of myself. I'm killing people with my messaging. I just go back to AA's big book on page 84 and go, how is this big book that says we've ceased fighting anything or anyone, and love and tolerance of others is our code? How is this effective? Because I'm getting these messages from AA participants absolutely smashing me. And I get it, because if something's working for them, or you're clinging on to something that is seemingly working, then any threat to that or any opposition to that, you want to fight for, right? Because you want to fight for your beliefs. So I get it, but at the same time, I don't get it.
Well, that's where it takes on a somewhat cultish aspect. And I don't at all call it a cult, but when people believe in something so much and they close their mind, and we find that our place in that country in a lot of different areas, that they can't see a different way. And in order to maybe be successful using the AA model, they need to believe it 100%. And so that's what works for them. And again, it goes back to, as you always say, and I say, if it works for you, great, like more power to you. But
Yes.
yeah, I mean, being closed-minded about any way someone can take a poison out of their life is detrimental to the program itself. So I think they are defeating themselves and their purpose by being aggressive that way.
So how did you become aware of our organization, Alcohol Free Lifestyle? How did you become aware of our program called Project 90? And what was the pathway, I guess, into our community? And then how did it noticeably differ from attempts to stop alcohol previously?
So it was on a whim. I came home from an event that I just participated in this year, and I was like, I need to do something different. And like a month before, I was like looking at different rehabs actually, because I was just like, I need a refresher in this. Like, what am I doing wrong, kind of thing. And I honestly, after years of this, never realized there were other ways, which is on my part, but I wasn't really looking for it. But just knowing that this wasn't working for me, and so someone liked one of your Instagram posts. It was that simple. And I listened to it, and I went on this like rabbit hole of listening to, went into your Instagram, then went on your website, and I was like, call this number. And I mean, I'm impulsive, so let's get that clear. But I've never done anything where it's like, call this number and you'll lose 5,000 pounds in 24 hours. Or, I mean, I don't get caught up in buying stuff late at night on the shopping channels or whatever, that kind of thing. But I was like, what do I have to lose? Because the problem is that with any of this type of marketing, it could be gimmicky, right? So I was like, well, apprehensive, but I was like, sounds interesting. And also you focused on the sleep and the anxiety, because my sleep was horrible. And I mean, regardless, I have a very active mind, and I didn't know how to quiet it. And so that appealed to me as well. It wasn't just the alcohol. It was, kind of the idea that anxiety and stress is not being reduced, and you're not sleeping well either. And so that appealed. And I got on a call with Coach V the very next day, and I was signing on the dotted line like that afternoon. So I mean, I related with Coach V. Our stories aren't that different in some ways with our experiences, and so she really spoke to me, and she had an empathetic ear, and she told what she told me. But I didn't even have, as blindly as I went into AA is how blindly I went into your program, to be honest. I didn't do months of research. I just said, there's a different way. Let's see what it's all about. Let's go for it. And I signed up and paid and was on a meeting like the next day.
And it seems to have worked out for you.
It's the best year of my life. I swear to God. I'm not, this is, I even printed it because I knew I would reference it. Sarah, Coach Sarah, one of the coaches who concentrates a lot more on the science and stuff, she has this little thing I'll show you, but it's the comfort zone. And it's my favorite slide. She'll laugh when she listens to this because I reference it all the time. But, the comfort zone is this place where we live. And it's my favorite aspect of what I learned in the year, which is we think, for someone who can't see what I just showed, just think of like 4 concentric circles across a plane. And the first circle is comfort. But comfort is just your status quo. I don't really like comfort. It makes it sound like it's a good place. Comfort is just where you sit, not dealing with anything, having stuff in your life that isn't great. It's a place that is only pleasant because it's the only thing but you're really not happy. But you can't ascertain what is actually making you unhappy. You just know this isn't it. And then the next circle, crossing over into it, is fear. And in order to get out of this place of comfort, whether it's whatever it is, whatever your coping is, whatever, it's scary to think what's on the other side. In my case, I've used alcohol my whole life to comfort me. It was my best friend. It's a relationship. So this place of comfort could be a relationship. It could be, as something that's not bringing out the best in you, more or less. But the unknown on the other side seems really scary when you're over here in comfort. So going into the fear, I always think of like a little mouse tripling into the circle, into fear, just with trepidation, looking through and just saying like, what's in here? I'm so scared. It's the unknown. And yet, and then you even try and go around it. How can I go around this fear thing? And that never works. So you always end up back in comfort. But once you go through the comfort, go through the fear, then you get to that circle of learning. And then once you get to learning, you get to growth. And so I just loved that and identified with it from the first day I saw it, because it's scary to think, how am I going to get through this? What's on the other side? How can I avoid the pain? But you know what? Part of the pain is part of the growth, getting through the pain. And I had to really identify my pain and where it was coming from to really get to this place of growth. And now that I'm here in this learning and growth stage, I want to stay here forever. I'm not going back to comfort ever again. Forget that. But the other thing is, I think of like, when you like have a pain from like, oh, I played tennis and now my shoulder hurts or whatever, and it's hurting for days. And then all of a sudden it eventually disappears, but so much so over time that you don't even really notice until like a few weeks later, you go, oh yeah, my shoulder isn't hurting anymore. That's what that fear sector is like when you're in the learning mode. Is you start going into the fear, you get there, and then you slowly aren't afraid anymore. And as you get through it, you can't even imagine, what was I so afraid of? That wasn't scary. That was awesome, And because there's such a feeling of peace and just zen and wonder at everything, that you're like, what was I so scared of? But man, that first step into fear is are the hardest steps you ever take in life. And what I also love about AFL is that I can apply this stuff that I've learned throughout the year in everything that is not serving me. So in living and learning and growth, I get to go back to these other things that, like, okay, what else isn't serving me in my life? It's out. It's not, and that's not even scary anymore. That's just, it's gone, because it doesn't serve me, and it doesn't serve the world, and it doesn't let me be my best self and live to my full potential.
It's funny, you were talking about growth requires a leap of faith, essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
I instantly thought about this interview I did with the celebrity LL Cool J back in 2006. Do you know who LL Cool J is?
Of course, yeah.
In another life, I was a Hollywood movie star reporter, interviewer. So I would go to the Four Seasons Hotel in Beverly Hills and interview movie stars who were promoting their films. And LL Cool J and Queen Latifah were promoting this film called Last Holiday in 2006. And I remember I was interviewing LL Cool J, and I said to him, what's the secret of success? Because you're very successful. And he said, it's standing on the edge of a cliff and you see rocks down below and you don't see the safety net, but you step off anyway, knowing that the safety net will appear. That's
Wow.
what growth is. That's what success is. I was like, wow, that just so stuck with me. And it seems like what you've been sharing now is kind of similar to that, because you kind of like on a whim, you didn't know much about us. You didn't do a bunch of research. You just trusted that the safety net would appear. And by all accounts, it did. And not just a safety net, also maybe like a rocket for growth, not just catching you when you fall, but actually propelling you into momentum in your life and growth. Is that how it's felt?
Oh, you're going to make me cry. If when you survive something like I did, you feel, what is my purpose? And never feeling like you've achieved, gotten close. I can't figure out what it is. And now things are becoming so clear of what my purpose is. And in that place of growth, it's exponential. So you don't just, grow, okay, now alcohol's out of my life, I moved on. No, there's like, if there's a circle, then they're coming from everywhere. The growth is immeasurable, and it's consistent, and it's multifaceted on different levels and different layers. And it's a really awesome place to be. It's its own dopamine hit and high. And it makes me like, it makes me emotional because it's always where I felt I could be, but I could never get there on my own. I needed help getting there. And that's another reason why I want to stay continuing with with a program that you're creating now for people once they finish their year, to actually keep this momentum going. And again, it goes back to the thing, I don't want it to ever stop, because it's learning is amazing. And the more we learn, the more we know we don't know. And that to me is so exciting, because there are no limits. I was limiting myself, that I put a noose around my neck. Alcohol was a catalyst, but there were other things that were holding me back, and it was only me. And I had to feel good in here to go out there and really live my life's purpose, which is yet to be determined.
What were some of the practical things that you experienced or learned inside of our program, Project 90, that was different to anything you tried? Like, what were some of the practical things?
Oh, one of the first, because part of your program is you get a video from you every day. And one of the first things was, at the end of the day, make yourself your celebratory drink of soda and lime or whatever that is. There's all these, again, rules in other programs where, you can't go sit at a bar. You can't have, not, if you have a non-alcoholic beer, that's going to make you want to drink, all of those things that really have nothing to do with it. And so embracing the alcohol free community. We didn't really talk about verbiage and words, but words do matter. And just saying alcohol free versus, I've made a life choice, I'm alcohol free. Wow, that's awesome. That's the response I get. On the opposite side, I'm an alcoholic, it's all negative. Oh, like what, that in itself for me, and I'm in a lot of social situations, is a life changer. Like, I can't even begin to tell you. But also just, it's the relaxing we're looking for. And ironically, that alcohol does not help you relax, and we scientifically know that, and everything. So just changing that pattern of what is inside the drink, but still embracing, oh yeah, I'm going to sit down and make something nice for myself, that's refreshing and nice, where I can reflect on the day, and it will calm me down, that can be anything, and not limited at all. So that was like one thing, but a big thing, it seems small. So all those videos came with these like little tips, and that, and with options like, oh, if you think you need to get rid of the alcohol in your house, get rid of it. If you don't, you don't. If certain glasses remind you of something that, again, is, I thought of something else. you know, get rid of it. I mean, it wasn't really a, a million little things. It was very succinct ideas and following the plan. And always when you're doing something, I was all in. Like I followed direction of what what you guys suggested. But watching the videos and putting those into my life, and then uh also um really following going to the meetings. And then we use Marco Polo, which, for those of you who don't know what Marco Polo is, we have a group that's private that we get to share our day-to-day feelings with, hopefully under 2 or 3 minutes.
Mhm.
But we get to know everyone else, so we don't just have accountability, we have a community. And these other like-minded individuals that I've met are some of the most incredible people I've ever met in my whole life. And we are a family. We really are. And I've learned so much from the program, but I've also learned so much from these like-minded individuals and
Mm.
everything. That's been phenomenal part for me too. And they're all over the world, which is great, because as an expat, a past expat, I love having connections around the world. So, and
Just
I want to can I just bring up one more
yes.
thing? Because one term that really helped me also through the program was Coach B mentioned something when I would reflect on a good memory of something. And she gave me the terminology fading effect bias. And that goes into the mentality like why a woman can have another baby, right? She forgets all the bad, all the good that comes overshadows the bad. And that's a lot of my experiences, like to identify that in a way that I could look at these experiences differently. So if I had a memory in the south of France with a really great bottle of red wine and a dinner with everyone, I didn't remember like, oh, I felt like shit in the morning, or I had a fight with my husband, or that kind of thing. I just remembered, this beautiful scene, us drinking red wine, almost glamorizing it in my life. And that was the memory. And when I could go back and identify, oh, wait, what was the real memory? That helped me identify, yeah, that wasn't so great, and that helped me a lot with getting rid of the social aspect of wanting to drink in social situations.
Mm. You mentioned like-minded community. What do you mean by like-minded?
It's not like we fill out a form and say, this is what we make, or this is what we do, or anything like that. You talk to us and you get a feel for what kind of people you want. And I mean, I don't know, it's not that distinguishable, other than uh, everyone has the mentality that they want to have success in their life. The success is defined differently for everybody, but they are success oriented people, and leaders in their community, and heads of companies, and entrepreneurs. And so when I mean like minded individuals, uh, I just mean that they're they're interested in having a better life and willing to do the work to get it. And even if that means digging holes or whatever it means, they're willing and in. And that made it that was very helpful in creating the community that I have gotten to know and love, and really love them. I love them so much.
Karen, just a couple more questions here.
Sure.
We were in Sedona, Arizona at our 2024 annual retreat. We had about 35, 40 people there. We did some fun things, but what was your experience like in terms of getting to engage with the other members and the coaches in person as opposed to virtually? Like what did you take away from that experience?
Wow, an explosion. I mean, there's nothing like getting to know people, and we get really vulnerable on those Marco Polo. So we are already really close. And it, then it just becomes, I'm meeting the family, but not the family I'm born with, the family I choose, and um, I haven't laughed so much in years continually. Like we had so much in common. We climbed rocks together. I mean, we pushed each other because we are people that like to achieve and like to win, and I'll have there is definitely a competitive thing going on within the group as well. And so we're encouraging each other to climb further. We cold plunged together in the Sedona Creek, which was probably about 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And we all said later on, when we tried to do it on our own, it just wasn't as fun. There was definitely the camaraderie we built within the group and the friendships these are lifetime friendships.
I love that. And then finally, you referenced your daughter, who was 16 years old at the time when she came in after you had had what sounds like a PTSD experience, and you had drunk heavily. And then, as I would understand it, your daughter probably witnessed you going into AA, identifying as a survivor, maybe not resonating with you're powerless over your drinking, maybe experienced things that maybe you didn't want her to see. And now, if we fast forward to today, how do you think your daughter perceives you?
I do have three children, but I have two boys, and she's sandwiched in between. And she and I have a very wonderful friendship. And now she's in her 20s now, and and she's actually become a mental health provider in a school. She got her master's in social work. So sometimes, she's so intuitive about people and their issues and that kind of thing. But I mean, you know, I have been their rock. I mean, to say that we went through ups and downs living in the Middle East during the time and place of when we did, I mean, it's underselling. It was a hard upbringing for them, and very stressful and a lot of anxiety. And she's been able to see how I kept working at it. I kept working on how to overcome this addiction to alcohol. And I think she's very proud. But I think for all three of my kids, they're like, we have mom back. This is the mom we know. This is the mom who just handles it. She's great in a crisis, which we've been in a few, and they count on me. So I did a spectacular job of raising three incredibly independent children. I'm so proud of that in today's world. And they're all independent. They're all, as I call them, they're launched now. They're all doing their own thing, living in different places. And they realize that, yes, shit's going to happen, but you can work through it and get beyond it and then grow, and life can be even better. So I think that we teach by example. And the socialization that I taught them and my parents taught me of drinking on a daily basis, because it was just what you did, just that's what we're supposed to do and how we're supposed to live life. Now they see a different modeling of behavior, and they can apply it where they want to in their lives, and they know where they can come if they want to make change.
Karen, congratulations on 1 year alcohol free.
Thank you.
What does the future hold for you? What's the plan from here? 1 year as we're recording. What happens now?
Actually, what I really like, a year in, I feel truly free now. And I touched on the freedom before, but I don't think I've ever felt that way in my whole entire life, totally free. And I'm very fortunate. So again, going to the exponential growth, for the growth to keep happening, but I definitely have different avenues that I'm exploring. I definitely would like to find a good way to share my life story with the world, because I've had so many unique experiences being an American woman living in the Middle East. And I was not an American living with Americans. I was an American woman living with Muslim Arab families. They're still my friends. I'm still very close to most of the people I've met there. And how do I integrate that? There's this element of victim to survivorship that I really want to study more and understand more, so I can share that. And then the work that I'm doing with that I'm in the process of building to work with survivors of human trafficking, where I've seen a lot of human trafficking living in the Middle East, especially. So I really identify with that particular area of need. And it's a prolific problem across the world. Over 50 million people are trafficked worldwide. And so I have a trip planned next month, going to Uganda, meeting with survivors of human trafficking with the nonprofit that I'm involved with. So those are just some of the things I have a whole laundry list.
I love that. Well, onwards and upwards, Karen. Thank you so much for
Thank
sharing
you.
your experience and your story with us. And it was so wonderful to spend time with you in person in Sedona recently. And
Yeah.
you radiate exuberance and energy and positivity. You have a beautiful, positive aura to you, was my
Thank you.
impression of you from the days that we spent together. And you're also incredibly supportive of other members, not just receiving the coaching and receiving the support. You're also very supportive of other people. So I want to thank you for that. Congratulate you on 1 year, and let's continue the journey.
Yeah, I'm super excited to see what holds next for us all, right?
Thank you,
Great.
Karen. And to you, the
Thank
listener,
you.
thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you on the next one.